Are you interested in doing companion plantings in your vegetable garden this year, but aren't sure where to start? One of the most popular companion plantings today is the Three Sisters. I plan to plant 3 beds this year in my garden with the Three Sisters and to show how I do it each step of the way. So let's get started. I've had several people ask me when I was going to start this series, and I'm very excited to finally be getting it underway. Today's video is going to kickstart the entire series where I follow the beds throughout the entire growing season. So first, what are the Three Sisters? And before I answer that, I also first need to talk about companion plantings. Companion plantings are just very simply where different types of plants are planted together in the same area so that they act together synergistically or symbiotically so that each one helps the other. In this case, what I'm going to be planting are the Three Sisters, which are corn, pole beans or climbing beans, as well as something from the squash family, which can include summer and winter squashes, or gourds, or even pumpkins. When planting the Three Sisters, the corn is planted first. Corn grows straight and tall, typically 6 to 12 feet tall, depending on the variety. Once it's about 2 feet tall, that's when it's time to plant the pole beans. Pole beans grow as typically a long, straight, single, thin vine, and they need something to cling to, such as a pole or a trellis, so that they can grow up off the ground. In this case, the corn serves as the pole. Then the third sister, which can also be planted at the same time as the beans, is something from the squash family. Now these two are also vines, but they're different. They're larger, they have bigger leaves, and they tend to sprawl in multiple directions, not just straight up like the beans do. So these make a good ground cover. So now, how do these 3 plants complement each other? Corn is a heavy nitrogen feeder, which is commonly referred to as a nitrogen hog. They need lots of nitrogen in order to grow well and mature. Whereas the beans are in the family of legumes, and legumes are what are known as nitrogen fixers. They have special nodules in their roots where they contain rhizobacteria, which are special bacteria that are able to convert nitrogen from the atmosphere and localize it into those nodules in the roots, which eventually gets sloughed off into the soil. Nitrogen fixing is made even more efficient in the legumes if they are first soaked in an inoculant, which is basically just a mixture of the rhizobacteria that is applied to the seed before it's planted. Third are the sprawling squash family. By using them, as I said earlier, they have big, large leaves, and instead of growing as a single vine, they sprawl out over the ground. So what they provide is ground cover, which helps to retain moisture in the soil as well as to inhibit weed growth. So now, how should these be arranged in a bed? There are many different ways of arranging the plants, and most of which involve putting mounds of soil several feet apart and planting the Three Sisters within those mounds. A quick Google search of how to lay out a Three Sisters bed produced these results. Note that there are many variations. Because I use a no-till method of planting, I don't want to make mounds, but will leave the growing area flat. I will show how I plan to plant the beds with my own layout with simple principles and concepts. I will start by planting my corn intensively on the north side of the beds so that it won't shade the other plants, and then we'll add a single row of beans to the south of the corn, and then add the shorter squash and pumpkins on the south side of the bed to allow sunlight to fall on all 3 sisters evenly. If you don't know what I mean by an intensive planting, I've done a 2-part video series on intensive planting that explains the process. I'll put a link to it in the description. Corn, beans, and squash all need full sun, and I've already made sure that the location of my 3 beds receive at least 6 hours of sunlight a day. Now, while I'm on the subject of the layout of the garden beds, I also want to make an important point about corn. As I mentioned in the introduction, I'm not planting one, but 3 beds with the 3 sisters. It's important to understand that corn is pollinated mainly by the wind. Wind blows the male pollen from the tassel, which is the top part of the corn, onto the female portion, which are the silks and the ears. Therefore, it's important that corn plants are in close proximity to multiple other corn plants. Planting a single long row of corn is a bad idea because pollination will not occur well. Crosswinds will just blow the pollen away from other corn plants so that no pollination occurs. Instead, it is better to plant multiple short rows so that the wind can blow the pollen from one plant to another. Another way of saying it is that it is better for your entire growing area to be more like a square than like a rectangle. Since I'm planting 3 beds with 2 rows per bed, I should have plenty of width relative to the length of my beds to achieve a good pollination rate than if I only planted 1 bed with only 2 rows. So if you haven't already, go back and watch my videos on the intensive planting method. As I mentioned earlier, I'll leave links to that in the description. I'll be planting the corn intensively, and so it will make a whole lot more sense if you've already seen those videos. And also, if you haven't already, be sure and subscribe to my channel so that you'll see each of these videos as I release them. That's all for today. I look forward to bringing you the next video where we're going to be planting corn.